Hey, I'm Jamey from Stonemaier Games, and today I'm going to talk about my favorite mechanisms in a game that I designed and am publishing, Expeditions. Expeditions is the sequel to Scythe. You've probably seen some other videos on this channel about it, or if you haven't, feel free to check them out. I have a number of videos about different elements of the game, how the game works, some turns to show how it's different than Scythe, all that stuff. But today I'm going to do my favorite mechanism about this game. It's going to be a little longer than normal because I'm the designer of this game. There's a lot of mechanisms that I worked a long time to hone and to get into this game that I think stand out and make this game special. I'm also very biased. This isn't a review. I don't do reviews, but this is a video specifically about a game that I designed. So keep that in mind as you watch this. I'm going to jump around. I have a number of things to talk about here. Let's start with the first one. I really like the location-specific cards in this game. So there are a number of quests in the game. So here's one. Banish the squatters. And so in Expeditions, you have all these tiles that are out on the board. They're numbered 1 through 20. And you always play with all 20 because there are 40 different quest cards in the game. There are 2 quests for each different location. So this quest card is saying if you want to, you can go to location 9 and pay 2 guile to solve this quest. And if you do that on location 9, where the squatters are located, you're going there, you're banishing the squatters at the specific location, then you actually get to draw 2 cards and pick one. So there's a reward for doing it. You also get to slide this card under your mech mat, permanently upgrading your mech a little bit. You get a one-time benefit, and then at the end of the game, you get a popularity multiplier. I'll talk about that more in a minute. But this was something that it took me a long time to figure out how this would work in the game. This idea that locations matter not just for their benefits, the benefit down here, the gather benefit, but also the location as a place that you want to go to, that you need to go to at certain times to, in this case, solve quests. It took me a long time to figure out, but I really like how it worked out. It gives you a purpose, it gives a sense of place, it gives you a reason to jump from one side of the map to the other as you're moving around, and the quest cards accomplish that goal. The location-specific quests. I like how corruption ended up in the game. So the way corruption works is that when you get to certain locations in the central, or when you get to any location in the central or northern region, there's a progression of south, central to north. When you reveal the location tile, you have a icon over here that has a number next to it. In the central location, they all say 5+. And that means you need to draw corruption tokens out of the bag, this bag of corruption tokens. You draw corruption tokens out of this bag until they add up to 5. So actually, this first one that I draw, they're numbered 3, 4, or 5. So this location will just get 1 token. And it goes on this location like this. And it blocks that benefit. So it's blocking that benefit. This location has kind of covered up the land, prevented this land from being, or this location from being as good as it could be, and you can't gain that benefit at this time. So instead, one of the core things you're doing in the game is that you are removing corruption from locations. You're going here, you're spending, in this case, this is orange, so you're spending power, 5 power to remove this as part of a vanquish benefit, and then you gain this token, which is worth $2 at the end of the game. And then from then on, you have this positive player interaction element where you have made this location better for everybody. Not just for you, but for everybody. It can be better for you at that moment. There's certain cards that say, like, when you remove the last corruption from a location, you can gain the benefit underneath right away. But also just from then on, this location gives you either 2 power when you gather there or a meld benefit. So you've made this better for everybody. I like positive player interaction, things like that, even in competitive games. And I like that the corruption, it isn't dangerous to the players. I went through different iterations of the game where it was dangerous, but because of the feel of the game, I decided I didn't want it to be dangerous to players. I wanted it to be an impediment, but not a danger. And I wanted it to feel good when you removed it. So you removed it, you get this better, location gets better, and it's worth $2, 2 victory points essentially at the end of the game. Also gives slight meaning to the numbers on the tokens, because obviously if I had pulled a 3 out of the bag, maybe a 3 and a 3, those 3s are easier to remove. It only takes 3 power instead of 5 power to remove. So for 3 power, I'm gaining 2 victory points as opposed to spending 5 power to gain 2 victory points. The shifting action selection. Yeah, so this went through many iterations, how the action selection in this game worked, and I really like how it ended up. The action selection of the game, for most turns of the game, what you'll be doing is within this rectangle up here, you'll have a cube, and that cube will be covering up one of those things. So on the previous turn, say the cube is there, covering up move. At the beginning of my turn, I need to move that cube to cover up one of these other two benefits or go down to refresh. But most turns of the game, you're going to spend within this rectangle. So I can move that cube from move over to cover up play. And when I do that, it means that on my turn, in either order, I'm going to move and then gather. So it means that every turn is a little bit of a puzzle. Which action do you want to cover up and not use? And thus, which two actions will remain revealed? And in what order do you want to take them? This is something that I stumbled through a lot during the design process, because there were times where I wanted to move and then gather. I wanted to play a card and then move, or I wanted to move and then play a card. It really varied. And for a while, you could just always do all three actions, but turns were taking too long and didn't give you all that interesting of a decision point. The order was still there, but I really like how it ended up, that you have to give up one of the core actions each turn to take the other two actions, and you can't ever do the same thing on back-to-back turns. You could, if you covered up move, then you're definitely going to have to move on your next turn, move off a location, make that more accessible to other players or available to other players. And then I like how the system ended up working too, where like at certain times you just need to refresh. You need to get your cards back. You need to get your workers back. So you go down to refresh. And following a refresh turn, I wanted a refresh turn to feel like, I wanted it to be a short turn, a turn where you can recover all these things that you've built up. I wanted to have meaning that you're kind of avoiding refresh turns as long as possible, if you can. But I also wanted it to feel good. And so the turn after a refresh turn, you move your token here, you shift it over here, and you get on those turns, you get to take everything. So I like that you feel really powerful after a refresh turn. You have all your stuff available, you get to do all three actions, but you're not doing that on every single turn. I really like that, how that ended up. The endgame goals. I like how these turned out. So this is something, again, that it took a long time for me to figure out. And then finally I went back to Scythe and I was like, Scythe does this thing that I really like in the game, and that it gives players clear goals to pursue over the course of the game while giving them complete freedom in terms of how they accomplish these goals and in what order they accomplish them. But it also gives players a sense of completion. So with these endgame goals, it's very similar to Scythe. You only have 4 stars instead of 6, where you're trying to either solve 4 quests, you're trying to meld 4 meteorites, you're trying to upgrade 4 items, you're trying to go specifically to location 20 and spend 10 power, 10 guile to remove the big corruption token from location 20, kind of a climatic location. Trying to get at least 7 corruption tiles, have at least 8 cards. And this one over here was originally 2 different categories, but I found that it was so not easy, but it's typically the first one that players go after. You're either getting 5 or 5 explorer tokens or 7 worker meeples. And so I broke this. I made this one single. I consolidated it into one single category instead of multiples. But yeah, these goals. I was actually playing Dead Reckoning while designing expeditions, and Dead Reckoning reminded me of how much I liked this system, this goal system that I had created in Scythe, how much freedom it gave players while still giving players a strong sense of progression, a reason to pursue these goals throughout the game. So I really like how that ended up manifesting here. I'll come back to it again, or actually I'll just talk about popularity here, because it all ties into the quests that you complete make the stars that you've placed on these categories better. So if you complete no quests at all and you have 3 stars out here, each of those stars are worth $5. But for every quest that you complete, whether it's 1, 2, or 3 or more, you make each of these stars better. It's very similar to the popularity system in Scythe. And so if you go after quests and then go after a few other categories, each of those stars could be worth $10 instead of just 5. And there's a range in between depending on how many others you finished up. I already talked about corruption. Items have in-game scoring, but I really like this popularity system. I thought worked really well in Scythe. How much were you going to focus on popularity or sacrifice it? And I wanted to include something like that here. The idea being, if you're solving quests, you're helping the people of the land, then you're getting more popular, and you're getting more value out of the glory, the triumph, your triumphant moments in the game. The asymmetric pairings. This is another thing. I don't mean to keep comparing this to Scythe, but Scythe did obviously heavily inspire this game. Expeditions has asymmetric pairings. I love asymmetric pairings in games because it adds, I think, a lot more asymmetry and replayability than if you just have one asymmetrical element. So in this game, you have your mech your random mech, one of 5 mechs, and then you have a pairing of let's see if we can find 2 of them that go together. Then you have a pairing of a character and a companion. They always go together. So Akiko is always going to be with Jiro. These are your 2 starting cards. So you get these 2 cards randomly among 6 different character companion pairings, and then you pair it with a mech, and then you have this nice paired element here. So instead of just having 6 asymmetric character companion pairings or 5 mechs, you end up with 30 different combinations that you can play through. And it's fairly light asymmetry in expeditions, but it's just enough asymmetry to make them feel different every time you play. I really like how that worked out in the game. I love asymmetric pairings in games and the replayability it adds. So I talked about a little bit about quest. Let me talk about the pivot here that happens in this game. And I'll talk a little more about items and meteorites in a second. But one of the core things that you're doing on your turn, I mentioned, is playing a card. So you're playing a card from your hand of cards, and it goes to your active row. You're playing that card, and you're gaining the core value up here. And then if you place a worker on the card itself, you activate the ability down there. And so this is one of the things that you're doing throughout the game. You're playing cards, you're activating these benefits if you have the workers for them. But there's a pivot at a certain point on a per card basis. It isn't like a certain turning point in the game itself, but it's often on a given card where you decide, okay, it's time for me to go solve this quest. And when you solve this quest, you no longer have this card to play. It gets tucked under your mech mat, making that mech mat better. In particular, the meteorites and the items make the mech mat better. So here's a meteorite. Let's see if I have an item in here. Don't have an item in there. Let's see if I can find one. But the meteorite, here's an item. So the items slide under the mat, the meteorites and the quest, they all slide under your mat, improving your mech itself, but you no longer have these cards to play. And this is a big choice to make in the game. When is the right moment for me to decide to use this to upgrade this item and upgrade my mech, opposed to keeping this card available as a card that I want to play on a continual basis? That is a crucial decision point in the game for every single card that you have. And I really like that. I don't always love sacrificing games. Sometimes a game says you have to give up on this one thing that's really important to you so that you can do this other thing. This is a sacrifice, but it feels really good. You get a really strong benefit when you do this, and often an ongoing benefit. This will segue into the items and the meteor as well. But this pivot I really, really like. For items, the way that this pivot works is that you use an upgrade benefit to upgrade this item. You slide it under your mech mat, and from then on, you gain this benefit, this ongoing benefit, without even having to place a worker on it. Otherwise, though, when you do have this available as a card and you're playing this card, if you're placing a worker on it, you not only gain this little one-time benefit, this one says gain a guile, but also, as long as this card is in your active row and you have a worker on it, you gain this whenever benefit. So that's what makes items stand out, what makes items feel a little special. Compared to meteorites, this was a design challenge of the game. I wanted to make each category of card feel different. With the meteorites are a little different in a couple different ways. They still have place a worker here, gain a benefit. The meteorites, when you meld them, you gain this benefit on the card. So you're kind of working on timing here when you meld a meteorite. This one says gain $1 per purple worker. And so you want to meld this meteorite, and it says max of 3. You want to meld this meteorite when you have at least 3 purple workers. And not only that, but every time from then on that you meld a meteorite card, you gain each melded meteorite card's benefits. So say I have this one. Let's see if I can find one other one and stack it. So here's a meld stone and a morph stone. So say a few turns ago, I melded this one. I had 3 workers. I gained $3. Say then I meld the morph stone as well. I activate the meld stone, which says gain $1 per melded meteorite. And so that would be 2 now. So I gain $2. And I then, as part of this meld, I also gain this meld benefit. So again, I look at the number of purple workers that I have, still 3 or more, and I gain $3. So they're stacked, they're cumulative. It feels more and more powerful every time you meld a meteorite as a result. that feels really good. And the other thing that I like about these melded or the meteorites is as cards, they get better as you meld meteorites. So the core value of the Morph Stone here is 1 Guile. But as soon as I have 1 or more melded meteorites, the core value becomes 2 Guile instead. As soon as I have 2 or more melded meteorites, whenever I activate this card, it actually it gets more powerful down here too. This one says gain 1 power per purple worker. So this benefit becomes more powerful too. This is inspired by Shards of Infinity. That game has this idea of mastery, of kind of leveling up and making the cards that you have feel more and more powerful. So yeah, I really like items and meteorites. That's the category that I'm kind of talking about there. And locations, so I talked about locations a little bit earlier, and this took me, again, a long time to figure out, but how to make the different regions of locations feel a little different and also make each location feel unique. So, and in the southern locations, they kind of feel friendly, that there are lots of people on them, they're fairly peaceful, and they have the types of things that you would gather before going on an expedition or at the beginning of an expedition. Originally, I had some of these things associated with base camp, that board that I held up a minute ago, but I changed it to put these benefits on early locations. So there are things like gaining cards, so gaining some cards, whether they're quest items, meteorites, gaining some cards, gaining workers. Most of the workers you gain are in the south. They're in the bottom tiles. And also, all these tiles are revealed from the beginning of the game. You don't have to go explore them. So these southern locations are revealed. This is the one that's getting a little scarier there. Here's more workers here. And so the southern locations are where you're kind of getting ready to go on your expedition. And then you venture into the unknown. And so the central and northern regions, the tiles are face down. You have to go discover them. You have to go reveal them. And when you reveal them, you don't know what you'll find. There isn't, again, a sense of real danger here, but it is a sense of the unknown. Especially if you're doing a move and gather turn and you decide not to gather before you move, you are going to, here you reveal this tile, the Weird Forest, and then you must gather. So you're gathering this purple worker because this is covered up by corruption. And so it may not be exactly what you wanted on that turn. You don't really know. There's uncertainty to it, basically. I like that level of uncertainty as you're exploring. And so you start revealing these tiles that reveal what else is going on in this world. And there are benefits that aren't in the south. In the central region, the thing that I did with the tiles is to make them an or choice. So you're either getting a purple worker, or if you've removed this corruption, you're taking a meld benefit. So that's kind of the theme across all the different central tiles. And then once you get to the north, here's a northern location. You can tell it's north because it says an N right there, N for north. There is no or here anymore. So you can see I've gotten rid of the or symbol, the slash. It's just you're getting all of these benefits. So they feel more powerful. They are also different benefits, but they feel more powerful, especially or particularly once you remove the corruption. Typically, you're just getting a card here, a face-up card, but once you remove this corruption, you're not only getting a face-up card, but you're also gaining a glory. You're placing a star. And actually, I'm glad I stumbled upon that card because this is one of the key differences between Expeditions and Scythe that I think is an important difference. In Scythe, whenever you completed a glory category, you immediately just got to place a star. In Expeditions, you have to go boast about it. You have to go someplace in this case, you have to go to this encampment and say, hey, look at all these workers that I have. I have so many workers. Now you get to place that worker star if you actually do have the 7 or more workers. Not only is this, I think, a little bit more thematic, but it also makes it more visible to other players that you are advancing the game. You are moving the game towards the end of the game, and that it can't happen all of a sudden. It's much easier to see, and even after a player, say, has those 7 workers and they've already placed 3 stars, you know they still have to go to a location like this to boast about it to place that 4th star. And even after that, all players get 1 more turn. I think it's a friendlier endgame than in Scythe. If I have anything else, any other mechanisms that I think are particularly good? This is one last little thing here. I haven't even mentioned the metal mechs. The mechs aren't really a mechanism, but I do like how the components in the Ironclad edition turned out. But the last little mechanism that I thought I'd mention is there were versions of this game that had a lot of different resources that you were gathering. But I ended up just thinking, it's just going to be a game about power and guile. These are your resources in the game. Yes, you're gathering cards, you're gathering workers, and you're using them in different ways, but you're not ever spending them in a way that you don't get them back. But power and guile are resources that you spend, and when you spend it, you have to replenish it later. You keep track of them on this track, guile and power. So there's only 2 resources in the game. It's one of the games, I think in most games I've designed, there's been way more resources or commodities than that. In this game, I wanted to just focus on those 2. And I like that choice. I think it worked out. Sometimes I think being simpler with resources is better, where you're not having players gather all these dozens of different things and putting them together. There are games that work really well with that, but I wanted to keep it simple here, especially with all the other things going on in the game. And so just having guile and power as the resources, I think was the right choice to make. I probably missed some things. There's a lot going on in this game, but as you can tell, I'm happy with how it turned out. I've enjoyed playing it I have the fully published version of Expeditions now, and I've played it just for fun a few times, and I've had a lot of fun with it. And I hope you have a lot of fun with it too when the pre-orders start to deliver soon, or if you're watching this in the future, if they've already delivered, if the retail release has happened. But yeah, those are my favorite mechanisms in Expeditions. I'd love to hear your thoughts if you're excited about any of these mechanisms in particular, or if any of them really resonate with you when you play the game. Or even if you have ideas for expansions or other things that you want me to do with these mechanisms, or even other games where you want me to use these same mechanisms. Love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Thanks.